All right, I'd like to talk for just a few minutes about some guidelines that will be helpful for you as we're exploring your actual scores. Number one, the scores from the FIRO element B are simply a snapshot in time. If you don't like the way you are living your life, the way you are behaving towards others, or the way that others are behaving towards you, you can change that. Right? These numbers simply reflect the way that you are perceiving your behavior and the behavior of others at the time you took the instrument. Right? It is not, as Will referred to some measurements, a terminal classification from which you can't escape. For example, if you want more inclusion in your life, there are strategies and steps that you can engage in to get more inclusion, to change that. For example, you can be more clear about wanting to be invited. You can be more intentional about inviting others, be more initiative. And that's a way of getting more inclusion. If you want less inclusion, there are strategies for being clear about your boundaries so people don't intrude on you. Right? Those are all possible because change is possible. There's no good, bad, right, wrong, best place to be, as I mentioned several times. However, there are consequences. For example, if you are someone who is low in openness, don't be surprised if a lot of people project onto you, project their own stories onto you, because you're not giving them any information to understand you about. Now, that's not good or bad, but just don't get offended by it. If it's just the opposite, say you're high on openness and you want everybody else to be high on openness too. Right? One of the consequences of that is you're liable to go around disappointed a lot that other people don't want to be as open as you are and share as much as you want to. Because if you're a 9 on openness, remember, most of the rest of the world doesn't want to be that open. Will was a numbers guy. He loved numbers, but he always felt very strongly that there's nothing magic about the numbers. The numbers begin the dialogue. They should be the start of the exploration, not the end of the exploration. So we sit down and we talk about, yeah, I'm low inclusion, you're high inclusion. What does that mean for us? How can we work together? I talked a lot about how the key is to understand what your preference is and then be able to flex so you can act appropriate in the circumstances. And we get into trouble when we get rigid. The numbers themselves do not tell you whether it is a preference from which you can flex or a rigidity. You have to do detective work to figure that out, which is why we're going to be doing some more exercises regarding exploring possible rigidities in a few minutes. Your reactions to the numbers can also give you a lot of information, particularly if you have negative reactions to the numbers. It's telling you that you're making up a story, and generally it involves self-judgment. For example, if you turn up as a 9 on control and you just do not want to be a 9 on control, that gives you information that you've got some storyline in your head that that's bad. And there's nothing inherently good, bad, or right or wrong about any particular number. So just notice the story, notice the judgments, and explore that. The 1% rule is if you think that the scores are absolutely wrong, it could be that they're wrong. It could be that they didn't accurately pick up what your preferences are. However, it is one of the more highly validated psychometric instruments around. And you did fill it out. We didn't fill it out. So what we encourage you to do is, at least for purposes of this analysis, for today, act as if at least 1% of it were true, and ask yourself what would be the implications of that if that were accurate, if that were the case. Now, if you still think it's not accurate, you might ask yourself, is there a particular relationship where this might be accurate? Or a particular time in my life, or a particular situation where that might be accurate? And you can explore it that way. And then finally, the differences can also give you a lot of information. Now, when Will first created the instrument, he used the term dissatisfaction as the measure between the way you are behaving and the way you want to behave, and the way other people are behaving towards you and the way you want them to, right? Because he assumed that that showed dissatisfaction. the more he got into it and developed it more, he realized, no, that just shows a difference. It might be dissatisfaction, but it doesn't necessarily mean dissatisfaction. So, for example, if you have a high number there, it could be that you are very excited about change. You know, you want a new direction in your life. You know what you want. You've got some strategies that you're starting to engage in, and you're very excited about that. It doesn't show any dissatisfaction. Or it could mean that you're not living the way you want to live, and people aren't treating you the way you want them to. And so there is a lot of dissatisfaction there. But the number won't tell you whether it's satisfaction, excitement, or dissatisfaction. If it's a very low number, it could be that you're very happy with the way things are. You're very happy that you're behaving the way you want to behave, and other people are behaving towards you the way that you want them to. All right? Or it could be an indication of self-deceit, self-deception. Ron was working with a plant, a bunch of mid-level managers who did not like their work. They were unhappy. There was no place for them to go up. They didn't like their jobs, but they had been in there long enough that they would lose a lot of their pension plan if they left. So they felt like they were trapped in these jobs. They were trapped in their neighborhoods that they didn't like. And so what they did, their strategy for dealing with that, was just to numb themselves out, to hunker down and not let them feel how dissatisfied they were. All right? So Ron was working with them, and he said it took several days of what he called emotional dentistry, where getting a feeling from them was like pulling a tooth, to get them to realize, all right, that maybe there was some self-deceit there. And then they could actually do something about it if they chose to. All right, so these are some guidelines I want you to keep in mind as we take a look at your actual scores and explore possible rigidities, and then engage in dialogue with other people who have different scores than you do.